So what I've put together here for you on this video is 12 of the most common themes. I'll explain what I mean by theme as we go through this around the subject of prostate for men, obviously. These are from my own records, my own experiences working with men who have come to see me for various different reasons. And it just so happens that they've also been experiencing prostate issues, not necessarily prostate cancer, but just issues around the prostate. Some were in fact cases of cancer of the prostate. And a common theme that I started noticing that can totally correlates with the German New Medicine principles. Now, if you have had issues or you know somebody, you may be a woman, you may be a lady out there that knows somebody with prostate issues. And if you know them well enough, then maybe some of these themes are familiar to you. So I'm going to go through them. So these are from my own notes. I've added a little description so that you know exactly what I mean by the title. So the title of each of these 12, I'm going to give a little explanation just to clarify what I really mean by each one of these. So I'm going to go through them one at a time just to see whether they relate. That's what this is all about. I'm going to be doing a series of common health challenges. This one obviously is for men. I'm going to be doing some for men and women of common conditions, and they're going to be based on themes. Okay, so what we're talking about here is when we have a diagnosis or a set of symptoms or a dis-ease of any kind, there is always a grey area outside of the obvious of a trauma like physical accident or maybe some malnutrition or over toxicity. They're really the only three causes, aren't they, of disease, is what we have always been led to believe. But outside of that, when somebody is seemingly healthy, have a good diet, exercise enough, but they still develop some form of symptoms of disease, then of course it's what we call the grey area. The grey area is it leaves us with some confusion, because a seemingly happy, healthy person still develops some sort of disease, then of course it gets us questioning, doesn't it? So that's what this is really all about, is the German New Medicine perspective, or the biopsychosocial perspective on symptoms of disease. So I'm going to come about it from a slightly different perspective, a different direction, and that is I'm going to give a list of relatable themes, or what I suggest as being the real true cause of prostate issues. And you've got 12 to choose from. So if you know anyone at all, or yourself, you are experiencing prostate problems, it's very likely that you're going to relate to at least maybe 2 or 3 of these 12 of the most common and relatable conflict themes behind the conditions of prostate issues. I hope I made that clear. So, first one, a feeling of being replaced, perhaps by another man, a little bit of territorial thing. Okay, so have you ever felt a little bit pushed out at home, maybe at the office? See, it could be in any area of your life, but as a man, like your role as the go out there and getter, the masculine figure within that environment, you feel that you're kind of being pushed out. You're being kind of like in the pack animals out there. You get a younger male come along, and the older male, or the one that's kind of worn out, frayed around the edges, feels like it's being pushed out. That's what I'm talking about, is when we go back through our evolutionary development, is how we might be experiencing our manhood. That's what all of these 12 are really about, but just very slightly different context on each one, different story behind each one. So losing your position or influence. So, did life put you in a situation where you suddenly lost authority or a sense of leadership. Again, this could be in the home, this could be at work, it could be within your circle of friends, perhaps. Whatever situation that you're in has something like this happened for yourself or somebody that you know. Next one, being treated as a sort of less of a man. Okay, I see these patterns quite often. I work with men and women of different types of issues, and like I say, people come to see me for all different types of problems, life problems, relationships mostly, health challenges. So I do get a more of a direct approach, but mostly people that are struggling perhaps with depression and addictions and sort of family conflict type issues. And these are the patterns that I've noticed. There's most certainly a correlation with certain conditions that I've noticed over the years and the types of issues and problems that these men that I've worked with, I see a very common theme. So feeling criticized or emasculated, I quite often see this in men struggling in marriages and relationships, feeling emasculated or being made to feel that you kind of weren't sort of measuring up, if you like. Okay, I mean that figuratively, not necessarily literally. Territory being challenged. Has someone entered your space, role, or responsibilities and taken over? I'm going to give you an idea of what this is all about at the end, just so that it makes some form of sense. A younger man being favoured. Okay, now this might not necessarily be in your relationships or in your marriage, or it's like somebody kind of sniffing around, sort of lurking, ready to pounce on your wife or your partner. I'm not talking about that. This could be figuratively. This could be in any area or sector of your life. But of course, if it for the man, if it's affecting you from a masculine point of view, that's what I'm talking about. Because all different stories could be going on for people, situations and circumstances can be happening for different men, and we all interpret things differently, don't we? Like women, we interpret different types of sort of trauma and difficult experiences. We experience them differently. It's different for the individual. So feeling overlooked or ignored in favour of somebody else, that fear that if you're not man enough, and somebody could be kind of lurking around the corner ready to pounce if there is an underlying fear or a perceived threat. And quite often it could be just in our imagination. It can ultimately have the same kind of physical effects on us. So helplessness in protecting loved ones, not feeling like you're being able to protect your cave or your nest. Okay, so was there a moment where somebody you care about needed you and you felt powerless? So think to yourself as you're reading these, can you relate to any of these? Because it's very likely, it's most likely, that if you are experiencing prostate issues, or you know somebody and you know them well enough, if they're open enough, or you know them intimately, you may well know what's going on and how they are coping with some of the pressures of being a man in certain areas of their lives. Sexual rejection or emotional distance. Very common for men, right? Feeling like you're sexually rejected. Did you experience a partner withdrawing emotionally or sexually? Happens a lot. Absolutely. Very, very common. Men are not particularly good at opening up and expressing their emotions. Some see that as a sign of weakness. Even the very masculine men that I've known through my life and people that I've worked with. Some of the most masculine men, they see opening up and just telling somebody about how they feel is a sense of weakness, and it's fear of being vulnerable and open. Okay, That can happen, that can come across in relationships. And of course, that can obviously that's going to lead to sexual rejection, and it usually does. And then emotional distance is becoming separated. But I'm going to tell you near the end how it all relates to the prostate, and it's fascinating. Feeling unneeded or unimportant. Have you ever questioned your value or purpose within your family or relationship? So quite specifically still is your role as the masculine provider, the masculine man. The masculine man, or the man that is ultimately, it's down to us to continue our bloodline of our own family generation. It's a little clue of what it really is all about, what all of these underlying themes of conflict, how they can result in prostate issues. Shame around sexuality or performance. Now, most certainly seen these over the last 25 years since the blue pill's been out, right? Why did they bring that out? Obviously, there was some medical reasons. Certain people would have probably needed those. Like I'm talking about Viagra, if you don't know what I'm talking about, around performance. And most of the time, I would say almost 95% of the time, maybe higher, maybe 97% of the time, men physically don't actually need it. Is that they can be in a relationship, have an expectation within them or put upon them to perform, and purely that pressure, that stress of making yourself do what maybe a part of you doesn't really want to do, then of course biology kicks in and prevents it happening naturally. That gives us the illusion that we have to take something because we think there's something wrong with us. Well, oddly enough, most people that I've known personally through our life and that's been sitting in my office, I would say most of them that have resulted to using Viagra have developed at some stage problems with their prostate. And it's nothing to do with the Viagra that's caused the prostate problems. It's more the internal, the mental and the emotional components of it. So have you carried silent worry, embarrassment or doubt about sexual identity or performance? Sexual performance problems for men is most certainly 98% of it is in the mind, and it's in the emotions, and it's in fear. Relationship breakdown, that certainly had a hit on your identity, that affected who you are as a man. A breakup, an argument, a betrayal make you feel like replaced, devalued, or feeling disrespected. Being sidelined in your own home. Okay, have you ever felt you weren't the man of the house anymore, or that someone else took that role? Okay, so if you're not the man in the home, who is the man in the home? I've actually known somebody to have prostate issues because of an over-controlling and overbearing mother-in-law, believe it or not. We're a very masculine mother-in-law at that. Okay, because the brain doesn't know the difference between reality and a perceived reality, and the proof for that is the experiment. Simple experiment. Think about it. Imagine sucking on an imagined lemon. Your body will respond. Your biochemistry, the saliva glands will start producing the enzymes to break down the acids. But if you haven't actually got a lemon, why does the body respond like that? It's because our mind, it doesn't actually know the difference between reality and what we perceive to be reality. So our mind can play tricks on us, send the same messages to our physical body and get it to respond as though the problem is real. So have you ever felt like you weren't the man in the house anymore, or that somebody else took that role? See that quite often. Maybe you can relate to some of these. Are you relating to any of these so far? Losing control of family matters. Have you felt pushed out? unable to influence what's happening in your own family. Again, it's emasculating, isn't it? So, in other words, the umbrella term for all of these is feeling emasculated. Now, that may well be a perceived threat, a reality. There may well be some sort of unresolved drama, conflict, dysfunction going on, centered around a man's role. That is, a man's role is to provide, and of course, worst case scenario is to reproduce when we have a perceived threat to our bloodline, ultimately. So what's all of this really all about, these themes? See, these themes of being a man, masculinity, identity, territory, purpose, role, sexuality, generational pressure, as in the pressure on an unconscious level, on a genetic level, is there is a pressure to want to keep our bloodline going forwards. It's just built within our genetic memory, our DNA. Protection, being able to be the protector. Power, emotional rejection, feeling like we're being displaced, and a sense of helplessness, all around the general theme of the role of being a man. So why does it happen? So our biology responds to the emotional hits that matter to you, especially the ones that we never talk about. It's very relevant for men. And that right, guys? Or gals out there that understand how men function? Do we really know how the opposite side function? We can guess, right? So, biological purpose. What's really going on? Because, of course, there has to be a meaning to this. There has to be a positive reason behind it, doesn't it? There seems to be a positive reason behind everything that happens. So it increases a man's ability to fulfill his masculine role, especially in reproduction. So it's all about reproduction. The prostate is all about reproduction. The testicles, problems with testes, testicular cancer. The guy that created GNM, he suffered a loss of his son. If anyone knows the history of Dr. Harmer, who created, or he was the founder of these principles of GNM, is that there was an accident and his son was accidentally shot and he died. And this was back in the late 70s or late 80s, mid 80s or something. And what he discovered, he went from being a healthy, normal, healthy guy to developing prostate cancer. No, sorry, testicular cancer. And this was about 3 months after his son actually died. And being a practical, logical thinking guy, he wondered, is there a connection? And of course, long story short, over the next 35, 40 years, he created German medicine, which is, it's nothing to do with a pill. It's nothing to do with a bottle of medicine. It's actually about knowledge and understanding. All of the hard work's been done by Dr. Harmer by connecting all of the dots and connecting the parts of the brain that control the different areas and different organs of the body. And he see these correlating patterns over and over and over and over again, and they was always consistent, they was always accurate. So the hundreds of men over the years that I've worked with, not all of them have come to me with prostate cancer or prostate issues, but they've come to me with different kind of life issues, relationship problems, maybe past family trauma, problems with work and career issues, perhaps addictions and depression. And many of the men that I've worked with have had prostate issues, and 100% of them totally fit within certainly at least 2, probably 3 of these 12 conflict themes. So it's not a coincidence. If we are experiencing issues around a certain organ, a certain area or a certain tissue of the body, and we are getting what we call tissue change or dis-ease or symptoms, then there is a biological reason behind it. Things don't just malfunction for no reason at all, although quite often it will seem that way. And I understand it can seem that way with something like the prostate. But just like when we go to the gym and put deliberate stress upon our body, we know that 2 days later we're going to get sore, we're going to be achy, and it's going to be a bit painful, and we're going to go through a healing phase. So men's reproduction is all about keeping our bloodline intact and going forwards. So Dr. Harmer experienced a shock where his son, I think it was his only son, by the way, suddenly dies. And now there is a natural, biological and unconscious need to keep the bloodline going. So biology kicks in, finds a solution, and it serves it up in a way of increasing a man's ability to become more fertile in order to reproduce. So there's meaning behind our symptoms, in other words. So I hope you found this interesting, guys. I'm going to be doing some more based on this setup, this layout, is that I am going to pick a condition, find the common themes, and give some examples for it. It's just another approach that I thought about of getting the message across to get some kind of understanding and a different perspective of what all of these common conditions, what they really are. So I hope you found it interesting. Thanks for your time and your attention. And please reach out if you would like to discuss anything any further in any depth. See you again soon.